I'm Howard Bragman, and thank you for joining us on Gwissues. Today, we're going to have a segment on Out in the Newsroom. We have three incredibly prominent, openly gay, and out broadcast journalists with us. Thomas, you got married recently, late last year. Did that seem to change anything in the newsroom for you? How did people respond? Any negatives or all positive? Because you're at the Lefty Network anyway, so.
Well, it was all positive. The only, I guess, some people were upset not to be invited, but it was all positive. I mean, I work with some excellent people, and it was a fantastic time. A little stressful in the planning, but it turned out perfectly. But everybody was super kind and
any viewers, nice. Any viewer response that has no place? Because they certainly talked about it on air.
No, people have been through social media completely supportive and kind.
Don, we worked together a couple years ago when you came out. Has there been any change since you've come out? Any change from your viewers? Any change at work? Anything you've noticed? Because you're in the middle of the road network, obviously, at CNN. And
middle of the road.
Middle of the road. They're trying to hone that middle ground, except for Pierce. And in addition to that, you're also based in Atlanta, which tends to be a little more conservative.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only conservative thing I would say about that is that we're in Atlanta, but I think people generally in the newsroom kind of know. The only difference is that we actually said it publicly where the viewer knows. And I have seen some negative comments, but I don't let that bother me. What I've gained in people who respect me for having the guts to be truthful outweighed any sort of negativity that I may have gotten.
You know, Charles, you didn't have as smooth a coming out road as these guys did. Can you tell us a little about your journey and what happened?
Sure, I'll keep it brief. Just in terms of timing, these guys are also I think they're so fortunate, but they're also trailblazers too. In my experience, from the first show I did on the air, which was in '94. When the management found out, the first thing they said to me is, "Why didn't you tell us before we went on the air?" Down to I used to do a show for King World called American Journal. When they found out, the Advocate wanted to put me on the cover. They pulled in a team of attorneys, and we sat around a conference table for 2 hours trying to figure out how to stop them and how to threaten them, if you will, so they wouldn't go forward with it. Now, this is the '90s. A lot has changed since then, and it's really great. But I will say, as recently as my last job, which was as the main evening anchor here in Miami, when I said I wanted to get married and have kids, they said to me directly, "Charles, do not do that. We don't need it." And it was a very strong thing to say. And I couldn't imagine them saying that to anybody else in the newsroom in that situation that wanted to go forward and get married or have kids.
Thomas, you, as I recall, you came out when you were working at ET.
No, I came out when I was working at CNN.
Okay.
So I was still working in Atlanta, and I was over on the headline news side of things at the time. But I came out, and it was I was in Miami at the National Lesbian and Gay Journalism Association annual event, and I was asked to sit on a panel, and I agreed to sit on the panel. So there are lots of ways soft coming outs. This was a soft coming out, so to speak. I mean, it was the most public thing I had done, where I talked about what it's like to be gay.
Don, do you want to cover gay and lesbian stories more? Do you cover them more since you're coming out? How does management receive that? How much voice do you have in exactly what you cover?
Well, I think I cover them more just because they've been in the news a lot more. You know, with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, with the president the president giving his support for same-sex marriage. I think I'm covering them more just because they're in the news more. But you know, what Thomas was talking about, I think Thomas was on the forefront even more so than I. there was consternation when I thought about coming out. I mean, for me, there were a whole lot of things that I had to think about, not only just coming out, but also being an African American minority in the business and that kind of thing. And so there were different facets to my coming out than there were to Thomas's coming out. And Thomas, look at him, he's Clark Kent. Who wouldn't want him to be gay or straight?
Huh.
For me, it was it was different because I thought, well, no one's really going to care, and they did, which was great. They did, and it was very powerful, and it was great.
Charles, did you, as I recall, you sued your station after you came out? Yes. And
yeah.
Where does that stand? Tell us a little bit about what happened and where it stands.
Well, we successfully resolved our differences. How about that? Satisfactorily. But it had everything to do with.
So that means there was a confidential settlement, right?
We satisfactorily resolved our differences.
Yeah, that sounds
Leave
like
him alone, Howard. Let him keep whatever he got.
What happened was my dispute with an ex made the paper, and it made a series of articles in the Miami Herald. And at the same time, even though we were the highest rated evening newscast, and I had just had a sterling performance review, and my chemistry with my co-anchor was great, in spite of all of that, my world turned like that.
Charles, are you actively looking for employment now?
Did you get my resume, Howard?
Everybody's got your resume.
No, I'm actually I'm producing. This is so funny to me. I am producing and selling a Spanish language 2-hour morning show, and it's great. We're in our 3rd week of production right now, and we're syndicating it throughout Latin America. And it is the most awesome thing I've been a part of since when I did a talk show back in the early 90s.
I think I see a vision board behind you.
Yeah, you do. There's numerous ones around here. It's great. Totally entrepreneurial.
Secret.
Well, I think it's great that you took a different path. I mean, sometimes suing the station can be a bit of a poison pill in TV. It's hard to get traditional employment again. So I think paving your own way was a very rational choice. And I want to end with, what would you guys tell your colleagues who are closeted, or do people come up to you who are closeted and you have these talks? Thomas?
I mean, there are people we all know, and whether or not, just because we work in the TV industry doesn't mean we know everybody in TV news. But I mean, just as people we watch, right? And we know that there are other people that haven't found the wherewithal that they need to feel comfortable in doing that. And I've always been an advocate for, people have to do it in their own time and space. They, can't feel forced and rushed, because it's just such a highly personal thing. And as Charles and Don both point out, I mean, we've come such a long way.
Charles, how are you feeling about it? Somebody comes to you and says, I want to come out. They're on a local station in Miami, which is a mixture of very liberal and very conservative all at the same time. Miami's one of those kind of cities. I mean, I was there in Florida last weekend, and we were watching the Golden Globes, and Jodie Foster got up, and all of a sudden there was silence on the screen. I think it freaked him out. What are you going to tell him?
You know what? I think I'm reminded of something Oprah once said about Ellen DeGeneres. She said, I cannot believe if Ellen did not eventually own herself entirely, that she would have ever had the career that she has today. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, you have to own, like Thomas was saying, not a splintered personality, but your full self, your true self. And at the end of the day, I think that's what you have to do, because you will never have that, idea of success you're going to have if you're not that, especially today. And you have to own it, and you have to walk forward.
Don, I've noticed since you, I'm going to give you the last word because you like that, Don. I've noticed since you came out, I think your visibility, your career is on fire. I think, not flaming, but on fire.
Well, someone said that, but go ahead.
I really think your visibility has been raised, and I notice it all the time with people I take out of the closet. They're worried about getting beaten down, and in fact, it helps their career. I think you're in a better place than you've ever been, aren't you?
I am in a better place than I've ever been. Since I wrote the book, Howard, and I get interns who come in for the summer or people who just start, and the first thing they do is they'll run over to me and they'll say, and they'll have my book and they'll have a dog ear, or they'll have, a post-it on it, and they'll say, "You said this in your book," and I just want to cry. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I never would have thought in a million years that someone would have looked to me, especially a young kid or a gay kid, as someone of authority. So it's very flattering.
Great. What a wonderful discussion. I really know how busy you all are, and I want to thank Charles Perez. I want to thank Don Lemon and Thomas Roberts for your time today.